The corpsey demon of Blackwater Peninsula in 1959. In the old Northwood District's Westvale commune, there was a rainy night that the elders around the Blackwater Peninsula never dared to speak of too loudly later on. It was as if they feared that if a human voice echoed just a bit too far beyond the eaves, the ditch, or the old bamboo thickets behind the garden, the thing that once hid in Thomas's house that year would hear them. It would raise that head which no longer belonged to the living, stretch its mouth into a smile, and call out in a wet voice, like something crawling out of an old grave, "Come here, come over here with me." That night didn't start with rain. The sky just pressed down suffocatingly low, black clouds slithering slowly over the thatched roofs. The wind from the river didn't blow in strong gusts, but crept in as thin, persistent chills, carrying the scent of mud, rotting grass, stagnant water pooled at the bamboo roots, and a very faint metallic stench like blood diluted in water. Thomas and his wife's modest house nestled beside a small ditch. To the side were rows of duck pens, and behind it lay a patch of wasteland choked with dense old bamboo, its roots jutting from the earth like blackened bones. By day it was just a gloomy corner of the garden, but as night fell, especially on nights brewing rain, that bamboo thicket seemed to stretch its own shadow longer, darker, swallowing the pathway beside the house. It made anyone inside, whether fetching water or checking the ducks, unconsciously quicken their steps, never wanting to linger. Eleanor had been lying in bed since the afternoon, and by evening her illness had taken a severe turn. Her body shivered violently, burning up one moment and turning as ice-cold as if she had just been dragged from the river bottom the next. The thick cotton blanket pulled up to her chin couldn't chase the chill away. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably, her shoulders hunched in spasms, and her fingertips dug into the edge of the mat until they turned pale white. She had always been a gentle woman, soft-spoken and measured in everything she did, but, at that moment, her groans fractured into thin, weak sounds, as if they were no longer coming from the lungs of the living. I'm so cold, my dear. Close the window, the wind is blowing in, it's too cold." Thomas sat by the bed, his eyes bloodshot with worry, and hurriedly stood up when he heard his wife call. He was a large man with a hot temper, making his living year-round raising ducks, slaughtering them, and delivering them to the market. His hands were always rough, his fingernails permanently stained with dirt and poultry blood. But in front of his wife curled up on the bed, all that hardness dissolved into clumsy helplessness. He stepped over to close the window, but just as his hand touched the wooden latch, a thunderclap tore across the sky, dry, prolonged, making the roof tremble. He started and turned back. Eleanor still lay there, her eyes tightly shut, her lips a purplish blue, her forehead beaded with sweat, but the corners of her mouth twitched slightly, as if she were desperately trying to say something that couldn't break free. A few minutes later the rain began to fall. At first, just a few pattering drops on the roof, then thickening, strengthening, until a wet curtain of sound blanketed the house, the duck pens, the ditch, the banana trees, and the bamboo thicket behind, making the whole space feel trapped inside a dark, sealed barrel. Thomas had just sat down and pulled the blanket back over his wife when a knocking sounded at the door. Knock, knock, knock. The sound wasn't loud, but it was so rhythmic and hollow that Thomas frowned, because even through the downpour it was chillingly distinct, as if tapping directly into his ear. Then Sam's voice called in, urgent, his breath catching. Uncle Thomas, it's Sam." Thomas turned his head, annoyed because right now everything in his chest was already a tangled mess of anxiety. "Why aren't you asleep at this hour? What is it, Sam?" Sam stood on the porch, half his body soaked from the driving rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes wide with panic. He was an orphan boy the couple had taken in as a hired hand for the past few years, helping to tend the duck pens, feed them, shovel manure, slaughter the birds, and deliver orders. Sam wasn't flesh and blood, but Eleanor treated him with more kindness than many people show their own family. She gave him a place to sleep, regular meals, cooked him porridge when he was sick, patched his torn shirts, and never once spoke a harsh word about his lowly background. Because of that, to Sam, Eleanor wasn't just a boss. She was the first person who made him feel like a human being worthy of love. He swallowed hard, saying that when he went out to relieve himself just now, he heard the flock of ducks crying out tragically from the pen. It wasn't the sound of ducks being hungry, cold, or startled. It was a sound the whole flock tore out of their throats at once, panicked, frantic, as if they had just seen something that did not belong to a normal night. He grabbed a switch and ran out, only to see several ducks leaping from the pen, thrashing toward the banana trees beside the house, wings beating wildly, necks stretched long, their cries hoarse and ragged. It took him forever to herd them back, but when he shined his light into the pen to check, he found a duck lying dead in the corner. Its body was jaggedly torn apart, feathers matted with blood, intestines spilling out, its neck nearly ripped clean off, blood splattered all over the bamboo walls. That wound didn't look like a dog bite, nor a weasel's snatch. It looked like it had been shredded apart by hands with very long claws, then left unfinished, as if whatever it was hadn't had time to eat its fill. Hearing this, Thomas just furrowed his brow, muttered that some wild animal must have prowled in, told Sam to reinforce the pen, and turned back to his wife. Any other day, he would have grabbed a lantern and gone out immediately, cursing out loud, scouring the garden for footprints, because to him every duck was money, sweat, and the family's meals. But that night his mind was entirely swallowed by Eleanor's illness. Sam stood at the door, looking in. Eleanor was wrapped tightly from head to toe, leaving only half of her pallid face exposed. He felt a surge of pity and fear all at once. Instead of closing the door and heading back, Sam stepped inside, stood behind Thomas, and asked softly, "Auntie, what's wrong with Auntie, Uncle?" Thomas turned around. There was a flash of irritation in his eyes, born from his nature of never wanting anyone meddling in his family affairs, but that annoyance was quickly crushed by dread. "I don't know what's wrong with her. I suspect she caught a bad wind, but it's so dark now, and the clinic is far. Even if I pedal her there, no one will be working. I'm just so worried." Sam asked if he had scraped her for wind or given her medicine. He said he had done everything, but Eleanor kept complaining of the cold, her body growing stiffer by the minute. The two men stayed by the bed, waiting for dawn. One sat close to the headboard, occasionally shaking his wife, calling her softly. The other stood leaning against the doorframe, eyes darting between Eleanor and the backyard. Out there, the rain fell in a steady drone. Every now and then, the flock of ducks would ripple in panic inside their pen, thrashing wildly before falling dead silent. And there were moments, cutting through the rain, when Sam thought he heard someone laughing over by the bamboo thicket. He couldn't tell if it was a woman or a man. Just a terribly thin, impossibly low sound that slid past his ear and vanished. Near dawn, Eleanor's condition took a turn for the worse. She no longer complained of the cold. That was the truly terrifying part. When a sick person still moans, still cries out in pain, still asks for water, the family still has something to hold on to. But when she lay perfectly still, her breath as fragile as a thread, her skin icy cold, her chest rising and falling with agonizing subtlety, Thomas truly panicked. He rubbed her hands, calling out, "My dear, can you hear me? Eleanor, open your eyes and look at me." She didn't answer. Sam leaned in close, seeing her breath falter, and urged, "This isn't good, Uncle. We need to get Auntie to the clinic right now. Any delay is dangerous. You carry her out, I'll go get the cart." Thomas was jolted awake by the words, and hurriedly scooped his wife into his arms, carrying her to the yard. The rain had stopped at some point. The pre-dawn sky was leaden gray, low and damp. The dirt in the yard was slop. The smell of the duck pens mingled with the raw stench of old blood. As he stood holding Eleanor waiting on the porch, Thomas suddenly heard a whisper right next to his ear. He froze. The voice hadn't been clear at first, just a murmur behind his back. He looked down at his wife. Her eyes were closed, her face a sickly bluish white. She couldn't possibly be speaking. He looked around the yard. No one. Sam was at the side of the house, straining to pull the cart out. But then that whisper drifted back, clearer this time, wetter, as if slipping through the teeth of someone standing intimately close. "Come here. Come over here with me." Thomas whipped his head toward the bamboo thicket behind the wasteland. The ancient bamboo stalks were thrashing violently, even though the wind had died. Under the fading moonlight obscured by clouds, he saw a shadow step out from the thicket. It didn't walk like a normal human. It swayed, twisted, its shoulders lopsided, its head tilted, its arms hanging unnaturally long, every step looking as if its joints had been snapped backward. That shadow stood in the suffocating darkness, possessing no clear face, but he knew it was staring right at him. And it called out again. Come here. I've been waiting so long. Thomas was so paralyzed by that shadow that he didn't realize Eleanor had slipped from his embrace. Sam saw it first. He had just kicked the cart's starter and looked up, blood turning to ice as he saw Eleanor standing rigidly in front of the cart, barefoot in the mud, the blanket slipping from her shoulders, her eyes wide open and utterly vacant. A person at death's door shouldn't be able to stand like that. But there she stood. Then she turned her head toward the bamboo thicket, as if answering a command that the living couldn't quite hear. Sam opened his mouth to shout, but she suddenly bolted. She moved so fast it didn't look like running. It looked like she was being dragged. The twisted shadow snatched her wrist, its long blackened nails hooking into her flesh, and pulled her into the bamboo. Thomas screamed his wife's name and lunged after them. Sam ran right behind him, gripping the switch in his hand without knowing what he meant to do with it. When they reached the spot, they found Eleanor lying face down in the dirt, right at the base of the bamboo, her body trembling a few times before going completely still. Thomas fell to his knees and rolled his wife over. She was no longer breathing. Her eyes were half open, the pupils clouded over, the corners of her lips turning purple. But on her wrist, exactly where that shadow had grabbed her, were 5 stark black bruises, pressed deep like claw marks. Sam stood behind them, shaking so hard he almost collapsed. He stared into the bamboo, and for a fleeting second between the rain-slick stalks, he saw something squatting there. Hunched back, head cocked to the side, 2 eyes flickering red like embers buried in ash. It didn't lunge, it only watched, as if it had already taken exactly what it wanted. Eleanor's death crashed down upon the house like a boulder. That noon, a rosewood coffin was brought back and placed in the center of the front room. Incense smoke plumed heavily. Neighbors poured in upon hearing the news, not just out of morbid curiosity, but because everyone in the area cherished Eleanor. She was gentle and kind-hearted. Her family wasn't wealthy, but she never let anyone in need leave empty-handed. When someone fell ill, she visited. When someone ran out of rice, she shared hers. Whenever a child passed by, she would press a banana or a cake into their hands. The deepest ache was that the couple was childless. After years of seeking treatments, drinking every Eastern and Western medicine, praying at temples, and trying every folk remedy whispered to them, the house remained devoid of a child's laughter. No one dared say it to her face, but in her heart she bore a profound sorrow. Thomas knew. He loved his wife, even if he didn't know how to speak tenderly. He figured if heaven denied them a child, he would just have to love her twice as much to make up for it. Yet now she lay in a coffin, a cloth covering her face, her body cold, and that childless void in the house suddenly felt agonizingly vast. Mr. Harper, a close neighbor, ran around helping to organize the funeral. He patted Thomas's shoulder. "Let it go, Thomas. She's gone. Grieving like this will only ruin your health. Go inside and close your eyes for a bit. The folks and I will handle things out here." Thomas only shook his head. He refused to leave the coffin. In his mind, that moment at the bamboo thicket played on a loop. His wife standing up, running away, that shadow snatching her wrist. He didn't tell a soul, not because he didn't believe it, but because if he spoke it aloud, her death would no longer be an illness. It would become a story of her being taken by something. And he couldn't summon the courage to give that thing a name. By nightfall, the funeral quieted down. Rice wine was poured in the yard for the young men of the family keeping the night watch. The Elsters sat smoking, talking in hushed tones, stealing glances at the coffin now and then. Sam quietly went out to the duck pens, reinforcing the doors, replacing a few bamboo slats that had been knocked askew. The ducks had barely eaten all day. They just huddled in a corner, their small, dark eyes fixed unwaveringly on the bamboo thicket. Nearing 11 o'clock at night, Thomas sat by the coffin, his hand resting on the wooden rim, his head bowed low. A chill draft brushed the back of his neck. He reached back to touch it, instinctively looking toward the rear of the house. The silhouette of a person had just glided past the kitchen. The figure looked exactly like Eleanor. He stood up, his heart lodged in his throat, and stepped to the back to check. No one. Only the sound of the rain starting up again and the metallic stench of mud rising from the yard. At that very moment out in the yard, Tom, the son of a relative, was drinking with the young men when he looked up and asked his younger sister, "Hey Clara, do you hear something?" Clara scrunched her face. "Hear what?" We're drinking. How am I supposed to hear anything? Tom shook his head, muttering he must have had too much. But a little over 10 minutes later, thunder and lightning erupted. The wind thrashed the trees around the house. Everyone hurriedly gathered the dishes and ran inside. The moment they stepped onto the porch, they heard a knocking. Knock, knock, knock. At first, everyone thought it was just the rain lashing against the wooden boards. But Louis, a cousin of Eleanor, turned pale and pointed at the casket. Listen closely, you guys. That sound. It's coming from inside the coffin. No one dared approach. The 2 candles flanking the coffin flickered wildly in the wind, threatening to die. The oil lamp on the altar cast a murky yellow glow over the cloth draped across the dead. The knocking continued. Knock, knock, knock. Steady, hollow, agonizingly slow, as if someone lying inside was using their knuckles to rap against the lid. Thomas ran out from the back of the house, his face draining of blood when he heard what they were saying. He called his nephews to help open the lid. Tom and Clara waved their hands in terror, pushing each other away, neither daring to step forward. Finally, he called Sam. Sam ran in, still smelling of the duck pins, but when he heard the knocking from inside the casket, a violent shudder ripped through him too. The 2 men placed their hands on the wooden lid. The wood was bone-chillingly cold. They looked at each other, then shoved together. The lid slid back. An ant let out a scream that tore the house apart. Eleanor lay inside the coffin, her eyes wide and glaring, her lips twitching, her chest rising and falling. She was breathing. She was actually breathing. People began to scream, "Ghost, oh God, run." Some fled into the yard, some tripped and fell, some broke down crying. Only Thomas stood frozen, staring at his wife. Eleanor turned her eyes to him. Those eyes were cloudy and deep, but the feeble voice that followed was so heartbreakingly hers. "My dear, get me out of here, it's so suffocating in here." With just that single sentence, every defense in Thomas's heart crumbled. He wept, sobbing as he cried out, "My wife has come back to life, my wife is alive again, everyone." People hesitantly crept back from the yard. The terror lingered, but the sheer joy and belief in a miracle quickly painted over everything. They helped her out and laid her on the wooden slatted bed. She was rigid, every movement laborious. But she was alive, or at least, her flesh was alive. When people love too deeply, they stop seeing with their eyes. They see only what they desperately need to believe. The next morning, the coffin was shoved into a back corner of the house. A feast was thrown to celebrate Eleanor's resurrection. Relatives and neighbors flocked in to offer blessings. Everyone said heaven had mercy on a good person, that her time wasn't up, that the king of hell had sent her back. But even during that very feast, Eleanor was different. She lay on the wooden bed, her eyes glaring unblinkingly at every person who walked in. Before, she had been so gentle, offering a smile to everyone she met, yet when Mr. Harper stepped up to ask how she was, she scowled, her voice harsh. "Get out. I don't like these people coming into my house." Mr. Harper was stunned. A few others were glared at so fiercely they backed away on their own. Thomas felt ashamed and explained that his wife had just returned from the brink of death, so her temperament was still unsteady. People chose to believe it. The news of her return from the dead was so overwhelming that it made any disturbing signs easy to write off as mere aftermath of the illness. But as the days passed, things grew heavier. Eleanor refused to step out into the sunlight. She wouldn't sleep in the bedroom with her husband, insisting on lying out in the front room. She ate ravenously. At every meal, she alone would devour the entire pot of rice, slurp the soup with loud, wet sounds, and crunch through bones, her eyes darting around as if afraid someone would steal her food. When Thomas gently asked her to eat a little less, she snarled, "I like eating up here. It's hot in the back, too much light, I don't like it." He moved to open a window for some air and she roared, "Don't open it." The shout made him freeze. Eleanor had never spoken to her husband in that tone, but just a split second later she offered a soft smile, claiming she was just exhausted and afraid of the glare. He believed her. Every single time he believed her, because he needed her to be his wife far more than he needed the truth. One weekend, the family of Alan, Thomas's cousin, came down from the capital to visit. He brought his wife and 2 children, Tom 21 and Clara, barely 19. Late in the afternoon, the whole family had dinner in the back room. Suddenly, Clara wrinkled her nose. "Dad, do you smell something?" Tom pinched his nose too. "Smells like rotting meat, right?" The adults couldn't smell a thing. Alan scolded the two for being impolite. But after dinner, when Clara went up to the front room to grab a hair clip from her purse, Eleanor was already awake. She sat cross-legged on the wooden bed, her hair loose, her eyes darting around shiftily as if the room were crowded with people. Seeing Clara turn her back and bend over to rummage through her bag, the corners of her mouth stretched into a crooked smile. "Clara, come over here. Auntie wants to tell you something." Clara turned around. The way her voice dipped and soared made the girl's skin crawl. But she stepped closer anyway because this was her aunt. The second she was in reach, Eleanor snatched her wrist. Her hand was freezing, her nails, longer than before, digging into the flesh. Her eyes bulged, glowing fiercely like the eyes of a demonic cat. She dragged Clara's arm right up to her nose, took a deep, lingering sniff, and smacked her lips. "What do you eat to make your flesh smell so sweet, so fragrant?" Terrified, Clara wrenched herself away. But the woman tightened her grip with such crushing force that the girl burst into tears. Just as everyone ran out, Eleanor casually let go, lay back down, and muttered, "Just teasing the girl a bit, no need to make a fuss." Clara ran to the back, clutching her arm and sobbing. On her wrist lay 5 dark bruises, not the mark of a human grasp but the gouges of sharp claws sinking in. That night a putrid stench began radiating from Clara's body. At first only Tom could smell it, then Mrs. Allen, then Alan. It smelled like a duck carcass forgotten in the mud, cloying and sickeningly metallic. Clara bathed for nearly an hour before it faded. That night Alan's family slept in the middle room. Near midnight, Alan woke to the sound of dry, scraping footsteps. The mosquito net sheltering Tom and Clara was being pulled up. The figure stepping inside was Eleanor, but the face was no longer human. The skin was mottled and sagging, the eyes red as blood, the mouth stretched impossibly wide. It leaned down to stare at the two young people, smacking its lips in ravenous hunger. Then it shuffled over to Mr. and Mrs. Allen's net, reaching out a freezing hand to stroke Mrs. Allen's face, whispering, "So sweet. It won't be long now. I'm going to eat every last one of you." Allen lay paralyzed, squeezing his eyes shut to feign sleep, his entire body drenched in cold sweat. At the very crack of dawn he woke his wife and kids to pack their bags. Before leaving he told Thomas everything. Thomas flew into a rage, accusing Allen of making up lies. But Alan just looked at his cousin with eyes full of both pity and horror. "I'm only telling you this because I still consider you family. Believe it or not, that's up to you. But the thing in your house last night was not Eleanor." After Alan's family left, Thomas stood in the doorway for a long time, furious yet utterly hollow inside. He desperately wanted to reject it all, but fear had already taken root in his chest. That night, Sam knocked on his door, his face ashen, saying he had just seen Eleanor heading out to the washhouse where they slaughtered the ducks. Thomas and Sam crept around the side of the house. The moonlight was bitterly cold. Under the mist, Eleanor squatted with her back turned, her head bowed, her shoulders jerking. A low, guttural laugh echoed out. Then she snatched up a plump duck, lifted it to her mouth, and sank her teeth right into its skull. The duck only managed a single choked cry before going limp. Blood poured down her chin. In mere moments she devoured the entire bird raw, leaving not a single bone. She lifted her blood-drenched face to the moon and laughed maniacally. After that she caught 2 more, washed herself clean, and went back inside to sleep as if nothing had happened. Thomas stood dead still. Sam was shaking violently. In that moment, there was no explanation left in the world that could salvage his denial. He whispered, "Sam, so she really has been possessed by a demon." The next morning, Sam went to the market to deliver ducks and ask around for a sorcerer. He returned at noon and handed Thomas a slip of paper with Master Thorne's address. Thomas hastily borrowed a bicycle and left immediately. The master's house was tucked away behind a canal, shrouded by trees. He had to ask several locals just to find it. Master Thorne was in his 60s, not tall but solidly built, his eyes sharp, holding a book of yin-yang bagua in his hand. After listening to the story, the master didn't rush to judge. He asked about the bamboo thicket, the duck pens, the slaughtering, the blood soaking into the earth. He asked where Eleanor died, what hour she returned, and if anyone had been watching the coffin. Every question made Thomas's blood run colder. Finally the master spoke. "Your wife is dead. The person in your house right now is not your wife. At first it might have been the demon from the bamboo luring her soul away. And then a spirit cat leaped over her corpse, turning it into a corpse demon. Your house has seen years of slaughter. Duck and chicken blood has soaked deep into the earth, making the dark energy incredibly heavy. It fed on that blood and grew strong. It isn't just borrowing a body, it's learning how to live among humans. If you let it linger, it will learn to mimic your wife's voice even better, learn exactly when to cry, and learn how to make you open the door yourself so it can eat the whole family. Thomas collapsed to his knees, begging. The master handed him 2 purple talismans, instructing him to seal the front and back doors to trap it inside. By nightfall, the master would arrive with his assistants. But remember, the master looked straight into Thomas's eyes. It doesn't win with claws at first, it wins with its mouth. It will speak to your deepest pain. It will pretend to be your wife. It will blame you. It will make promises. It will beg. If your heart softens, no one can save you. Thomas returned and with Sam plastered the talismans, one on the front door, one on the back. Then the 2 of them sat in the yard and waited. Inside the house, the demon woke up, calling out in Eleanor's voice, "Thomas, where are you? Set the table. I want to eat." No one answered. It called out again, sweeter, "Are you mad at me? I'm so hungry." Then it realized something was wrong. It walked to the back door and touched the latch. A sizzling sound erupted. Like flesh pressed against scorchish iron, it roared in agony. From the window, Eleanor appeared, her hair a tangled mess, her eyes blood red, her face contorted with rage. "You locked me in? Who gave you the right to lock me in?" The screaming drew the neighbors, Mr. Harper, folks from next door, and soon a whole crowd gathered at the gate. Thomas couldn't hide it anymore, so he told them everything. The people were torn between terror and pity, whispering their sorrow for Eleanor. The demon suddenly changed its face. It clung to the window bars, tears streaming down, speaking in Eleanor's soft, fragile, heartbroken voice. "My dear, I'm your wife. The demon forced me to do bad things. It's gone now. I'm awake. Peel off the talisman and let me out." "Don't you love me anymore?" The crowd wavered. Someone murmured, "Look at her. That's Eleanor all right." Someone else said they should wait for the master. Thomas looked at his wife's face, his eyes welling with tears, his legs carrying him forward on their own. The demon didn't look at Sam, but Sam looked at it. He saw that its eyes had no pupils, only a murky solid red like blood mixed with water. He lunged forward and yanked Thomas back just as the man was only an arm's reach from the bars. The demon instantly stopped crying. Its face shattered into a venomous smile. The skin sagged, a forked tongue flicked out, and yellow fluid seeped from the corpse. "You're very good, orphan boy. I'll eat you first. I'll crunch every single bone in your body just so he can hear it." By the time Master Thorne arrived with his 2 elder martial brothers, Master Locke and Master Vance, night had already fallen. The 3 men carried cloth bags and wore Taoist robes as they stepped into the yard. The moment he neared the duck slaughtering washhouse, Master Thorne stopped in his tracks, looking down at the earth, blackened and slick from years of blood. Master Vance muttered that the dark energy was overwhelmingly thick. Master Thorne slapped a red talisman onto the trunk of a nearby tree, whispering an incantation. Then he asked who was born in the year of the tiger, to later help carry the corpse. Sam and Toby, Mr. Harper's son, stepped forward. The 2 were handed purple talismans to keep close to their bodies. Everyone stayed out in the yard. No one dared speak above a whisper anymore. From the moment the 3 masters arrived, the demon inside the house fell dead silent. That silence was far more terrifying than its howling. It felt like an entity that wasn't intimidated in the least, merely waiting to see what the living intended to do. The 3 masters stood before the door. The talisman sealing the entrance suddenly flickered, burst into flames and fluttered to the floor. Master Locke frowned. An ill omen. Master Thorne raised a hand to stop him. "It wants us to think it's strong. It wants us to act rashly. Do not let it dictate the rhythm." Master Vance nodded. The 3 didn't storm in right away. They stood outside the door chanting a suppression mantra, each beat slow, steady, and low. Inside it remained quiet. The crowd behind them held their breath. Then, from the bowels of the house, a very soft laugh echoed out. It wasn't loud, it wasn't frantic, but almost delighted. It was Eleanor's voice, but stretched longer, deeper. "The 3 masters have arrived, have they? Come in. This house is plenty big. There's still plenty of room to die." The words sent a violent shudder through the people in the yard. Master Thorne pushed the door open and stepped in first. The air inside was bone-chilling. Not the cold of a rainy night, but the stagnant, preserving cold of a corpse locked in a sealed room. A suffocating stench of decay clung to the back of the throat. The ancestral altar was in ruins, the portraits overturned on the floor, the incense bowls knocked askew. Only the oil lamp still stood on the table. Master Thorne struck a match. The sickly yellow light illuminated the wooden bed smeared with a thick, viscous yellow fluid, the deep gouges on the wooden walls, the wet footprints tracking from the bed to the window before vanishing. The three masters moved slowly. They couldn't see it, but its voice began echoing from multiple directions at once. "Looking for me? I'm right here. No, over here. No, behind you." Master Locke tightened his grip on his copper sword. Master Vance muttered his incantations. Master Thorne didn't spin wildly chasing the voices. He stood in the center of the room, raising the oil lamp high, his voice unshakable. "Come out. You've already stolen a dead body. You've glutted yourself on the blood of this house. What use is there in hiding?" A stretch of silence. Then Eleanor's voice cried out from right behind Thomas out by the door. "My dear, save me." Thomas jerked violently, desperate to run inside. Sam locked his arms around the man. Inside the house, Master Thorne closed his eyes for a single beat, then spoke. "That is not your wife. Your wife is no longer suffering inside that shell. The thing calling out to you is only something that knows how much you love her." A burst of laughter erupted from high above. This time all three masters looked up. Clinging upside down to the crossbeam like a monstrous lizard was the demon. Eleanor's body hung head first, her hair dangling in fluid-matted clumps, her clothes shredded, her stomach unnaturally distended and deflated, her crimson eyes staring down. Its mouth stretched grotesquely wide, looking nothing like the gentle woman the neighborhood once knew. But what paralyzed everyone with dread wasn't its appearance. It was how it spoke. It didn't roar. It smiled tenderly, like someone making gentle conversation over dinner. "Thomas loves his wife so much, doesn't he? Loves her so much that he hears a corpse knocking in a coffin and opens it. Loves her so much that he sees her eating raw ducks and doesn't dare strike her down. Loves her so much that even knowing she's dead, he lies to himself." It twisted its head, staring out the door to where Thomas stood trembling. "You think I'm cruel? No, you're the cruel one. You left your wife utterly alone for decades. No children, no sound of a baby, blood in the house every single day. She prayed for a child, and you gave her the sound of ducks getting their throats slit. She was freezing, and you didn't get her to the doctor in time. She died in the bamboo thicket. You dragged her corpse back, and then rejoiced when the dead meat opened its eyes. Do you love her? Or are you just terrified of being alone?" Thomas looked as if he had been struck squarely in the chest. His face went ashen. Those words were venomous not because they were entirely false, but because woven within them were twisted shards of truth. He hadn't gotten his wife to the clinic in time. He had let the duck blood soak into the dirt year after year. He had rejoiced far too soon when the corpse opened its eyes. The demon saw those fractures and drove its claws right into them. Master Thorne roared, "Silence! Do not use the sins of the living to mask your own wicked karma." The demon snapped its head toward the master, cackling wildly. "Wicked karma? You make it sound so elegant. Then who fed me? Who poured blood into the earth every single day? Who slaughtered? Who plucked the feathers? Who laughed and chatted while the creatures thrashed? I only drank what you people threw away. I only ate what you offered up without even knowing you were offering it. This house worships the earth god, but the earth here drinks more blood than water. You think slapping up a few slips of paper can erase decades of that metallic stench?" Master Vance took a step forward. "You are a demon. Drop the pretense of passing moral judgment. And you are men masquerading as saints." It lowered its voice, its gaze dragging over each of them. "Mr. Vance, isn't it? Your hands are shaking. Because last time down in Highmore you didn't save that possessed child in time, did you? She screamed for her mother until she died, and you still chanted the wrong verses. Mr. Locke, you accept more offerings from families than the verret you actually earn. Mr. Thorne," it paused, its smile stretching impossibly wider. "You knew you didn't have the power to trap me alone, so you dragged these two along. You are terrified of dying. Don't speak of duty as if it's something sacred. Every single one of you living creatures has rotting spots. The only difference is, I can smell them. Outside, the crowd couldn't hear every exact word, but hearing its voice dip and soar, hearing the masters fall silent for a fleeting second, their blood ran colder. Inside, Master Thorn understood exactly what the demon was doing. It wasn't just resisting the talismans. It was actively trying to rip the three masters apart using their memories, their sins, the vulnerabilities no one wanted exposed in front of others. If just one man wavered, the circle of suppression would break. If the circle broke, it would escape. Master Thorn slowly set the oil lamp down on the table, his voice low but ironclad. Yes, every living soul has sinned. But sins do not grant a demon the right to devour men. Fear cannot strip a spell of its power if the heart remains righteous. You talk so much only because you do not want us to finish chanting the circle. The demon narrowed its eyes. For the first time, the wicked amusement on its face thinned out. Master Thorn began to chant. Master Locke and Master Vance joined in. Three deep rhythmic voices wove together, forging a wall of sound as heavy as thick rope. The demon on the crossbeam shook its head, its smile returning but much more erratic. It abruptly changed its voice, Eleanor's voice. My dear, it hurts so much, they're hitting me. Are you just going to let them hurt me? Thomas groaned, touching his head in both hands. Sam held him tighter. It spoke again, this time as if genuinely weeping. Sam, your auntie loved you. Are you going to let them burn my body? I fed you, I gave you a place to sleep, and this is how you repay me. Sam burst into tears. It hit the exact spot. It knew who owed who loved who, where everyone was weakest. Sam was shaking uncontrollably, but he didn't let go of Thomas. He bit his lip until it bled, hissing through clenched teeth. Auntie Eleanor doesn't talk like that. Auntie never asked to be repaid. The words made the demon freeze. Its face twisted in fury. Master Thorn hurled a talisman at the crossbeam. Before it even touched the creature, it burst into ash. The demon laughed, but the sound was no longer casual. It began to scuttle along the beam, unnervingly fast and sticky, Eleanor's body bending backward, her head pivoting far past the limits of human bone. Every time the masters chanted, it spat out a sentence, each one aimed like a dagger at someone in the yard. It called out to Mr. Harper, telling him his son Toby, born in the year of the tiger, would die tonight if he stepped inside. Mr. Harper shuddered. It called out to Clara, even though the girl had fled back to the capital, whispering that her wrists still smelled sweet, and laughed. It called out the names of neighbors who had borrowed rice from Eleanor and never paid her back, who had taken her charity only to gossip behind her back. The crowd outside broke into a panic, staggering backward step by step. The terror wasn't just that the demon knew their names, but that it intimately knew every single one of their shames. Master Locke gripped his copper sword tightly, ready to leap up and strike. Master Thorn stopped him. Do not fight to its rhythm. It wants us angry. Master Vance rolled out a crimson thread, forming a circle on the floor. The three masters stepped back one by one, not retreating, but luring it into the exact spot they needed. The demon saw it and sneered. Luring me down? You think I'm as stupid as those ducks? It abruptly unhinged its jaw and spat a glob of yellow fluid onto the red thread. The thread hissed and snapped. Master Vance turned pale. The demon instantly shifted its voice into the agonizing wail of a child. Mama! Mama! That cry echoing in Eleanor's barren house felt like a blade twisting in the gut. Thomas collapsed to the ground. The demon whispered, she wanted a child so badly. I gave her the sound of a baby. I'm letting you hear it. Don't you want it? I will stay inside this body, and our house will have the sound of a crying baby every single night. You won't be lonely anymore. Just peel off the talisman. Just tell the masters to leave. That was no longer a threat. It was a seduction. A sick, twisted promise that struck at the absolute deepest wound the couple shared. Thomas wept silently. Sam knelt beside him, gripping his shoulders, whispering, Uncle, don't listen. Auntie Eleanor wouldn't want this. Auntie is so kind. She wouldn't want to eat anybody. Inside the house, Master Thorn stared at the demon, his voice turning to ice. You do not understand love, so you only know how to mimic the sound of it. You do not understand children, so you only know how to use an infant's cry to bait the grieving. You do not understand the dead, so you think a talking corpse is alive. You have festered in this earth for 100 years, and the only thing you have ever learned is hunger. This time the demon didn't smile. It shrieked and lunged downward. Master Locke swung his copper sword to block it. As the blade struck its arm, the stench of burning flesh erupted. It was violently thrown against the wall, its claws shredding the wood, but it rebounded instantly. Master Vance hurled a binding talisman. Master Thorn struck his brass bell. The chime was so piercingly sharp that the glass of the oil lamp shuddered. The demon convulsed, yet it still refused to abandon the corpse. It crawled on all fours, scrambling frantically while speaking through Eleanor's throat, its voice violently jumping from hers to the demon's guttural growl, to a crying child, to Sam, to Thomas. "Don't hit me, I'm Eleanor. Sam, save your auntie, my dear, it hurts so much. I'm hungry, I'm hungry." That auditory butchery made the people in the yard clamp their hands over their ears. But the three masters held their rhythm. They no longer attacked recklessly. They forced it back step by step, syllable by syllable, as Master Vance reconnected the broken red thread with the blood from his own fingertips. Master Thorn commanded Master Locke not to aim for its head, but for the shadow beneath its feet, because a thing that borrows a corpse always casts its own shadow. Master Locke slashed the copper sword down at the floorboards. The warped silhouette beneath Eleanor's body violently jerked. The demon howled. Eleanor's body arched backward, her jaw unhinging grotesquely. A torrent of foul black and yellow mist began to spew out, only for the creature to frantically suck it back in. Master Thorn bellowed. "Sam, Toby, inside!" Sam and Toby charged in, even though their faces were deathly pale. The two men born in the year of the tiger clutched their purple talismans, standing on either side of the door. Their intense yang energy caused the freezing miasma in the house to recoil. The demon glared at Sam, its eyes boiling with pure hatred. "Orphan, homeless, motherless, you really think your auntie loved you? She only loved you because you knew how to obey. I'll eat you, and then you'll finally have a place to live in my stomach. You won't have to wander anymore." Sam was shaking, but he held the talisman high, his voice choking but resolute. If Auntie Eleanor could still see, she would never let you use her face to speak like that. That sentence was the final blade. The demon broke rhythm. Master Thorn hurled a crimson talisman right into the mouth of the corpse. Master Vance yanked the thread tight. Master Locke pressed the flat of his copper sword hard against Eleanor's chest. The three men chanted with roaring force. Eleanor's face mutated violently, shifting from gentle, to withered, to feral beast, to a massive cat bearing its fangs. And then, from her mouth, a geyser of sickly yellow-black smoke violently expelled itself, accompanied by a shriek that sounded like hundreds of ducks having their throats slashed all at once. The smoke didn't dissipate. It coalesced into a smaller shadow, as impossibly fast as a feline, lunging toward the back door. But the sealing talisman was still there. It violently rebounded, howling in agony. Master Thorn struck the bell one final time. The plume of smoke was sucked directly into an earthen jar already heavily inscribed with sealing runes. The lid was slammed shut, the red cord whipped around it. Eleanor's body collapsed heavily to the floorboards, limp and utterly silent. Inside the house, the stench of decay lingered, but the laughter was finally dead. Everyone thought it was over. Thomas threw himself forward, cradling his wife's body, sobbing uncontrollably. But Master Thorn didn't let him hold her for long. He told them Eleanor had truly died that night at the bamboo thicket. Her shell had been occupied for far too long, and she needed to be shrouded immediately. Sam and Toby lifted the body and laid it back into the coffin. As Sam pulled the shroud over her face, he noticed her expression was different this time. No longer twisted into a sneer, no longer rigidly taut. There was only a profound exhaustion and sorrow, like someone who had finally been handed back their own body after an unbearably long nightmare. Master Thorn stepped out into the yard, his face offering no relief. Thomas asked, his voice trembling, "Is it over, Master? Has it been caught?" Master Thorn stood in silence for a long moment, then spoke a sentence that turned everyone's blood to ice. "The thing inside the jar is a corpse-possessing spirit cat. It leaped over the body to animate it, and hijacked the corpse to gorge itself. As for the thing out in the bamboo thicket, it hasn't been caught yet." Thomas staggered. "Then the voice calling my wife, that was it. It lured your wife's soul away first. The spirit cat was merely the scavenger that came after, taking over the empty shell. The demon in the bamboo is far more cunning. It knows how to let other things take the beating for it." The master looked out toward the pitch-black bamboo grove behind the house. "It just listened to everything. and it will remember every single one of your faces. Eleanor was buried for a second time, with the three masters presiding over the rites. There was no celebratory feast, no blessings, only Thomas's choked sobs and the quiet sound of Sam pressing incense into the grave. But in the nights that followed, agonizing cries still rang out from the duck pens. Come morning, 2 or 3 would be dead, their bodies torn to shreds, their blood almost entirely drained. Thomas sought out Master Thorn once more. The master calculated on his fingers, brooded for a very long time, and finally said, I told you the land your house sits on is malicious. That demon has lived for a century, feeding on blood to sustain itself, and it has learned to use human hearts as its traps. I cannot guarantee that my brothers and I have the spiritual cultivation to catch it right now, not on its own soil. If you want to live, move away. Abandon the slaughtering trade. Do not mourn the land, the pens, or the flock of ducks. There are places where staying just one more night will cost you your life in rent. Thomas agonized over it for days. That house was his life's work. Those duck pens were his sweat, his youth, the years he and Eleanor had lived together, hoping for a child, hoping to grow old side by side. But every night, hearing the bamboo rustle even when the wind was dead, hearing the ducks cry out and then fall utterly silent, he understood that the thing waiting out there was in no rush. It had waited 100 years. It could afford to wait a few more nights for him to soften, for his greed to take over, for him to stay. Finally, he sold off the flock at a massive loss, quit his trade, padlocked the doors, and moved away. Sam followed him for a time before eventually leaving the region as well. The house was left to rot. The bamboo thicket behind it kept growing. No one dared chop it down. On rainy nights, people walking past swore they still heard ducks crying out from the empty wasteland, the sound of claws scraping against wooden walls, and a woman's voice calling out to her husband so very sweetly, Thomas, open the door for me, my dear. Many years later, the Blackwater Peninsula changed. Dirt paths became wide roads, houses sprang up, the ditch was filled in, and the newcomers knew nothing of the old tales. But the elders still warned their children and grandchildren never to walk too close to the bamboo thickets after the rain, especially if they suddenly caught the heavy scent of fresh duck blood, even though there were no slaughterhouses or duck pens anywhere near. As for Thomas, people say he lived for many more years but never took another wife. He gave up drinking, gave up the trade of slaughter, and kept a frayed, ancient talisman in his pocket at all times. Whenever he heard a cat yowl in the dead of night, his face would turn deathly white. Once someone asked him if he had truly believed Eleanor had come back to life. He stayed quiet for a long time before answering. I don't know. I only know that once in my life, I heard my wife calling out to me from inside a coffin. And because I loved her so much, I believed it. The demon doesn't beat a man with sheer strength. It beats him by striking exactly where he is weakest. That story does not have a clean ending. Eleanor died unjustly, her mortal shell desecrated, the kindness she showed in life unable to save her from being dragged into the bamboo on a rainy night. Thomas lived, but for the rest of his life he carried the agonizing questions. If only he had taken his wife to the clinic sooner that first night. If only he hadn't let duck blood soak into the earth year after year. If only he hadn't rejoiced so blindly when a corpse opened its eyes, would she have suffered less? Sam lived. But every time he saw someone slitting a duck's throat at the market, he remembered Eleanor's blood-drenched face under the moonlight. He remembered the demon calling him a homeless orphan. He remembered the last words he forced himself to say to keep from breaking. Auntie Eleanor never asked to be repaid. As for the thing in the bamboo thicket, no one can say for sure where it went. Perhaps it abandoned the area. Perhaps it is still there, waiting for another house, another man, another profound loneliness, another stream of blood to seep into the earth. And perhaps, on those rainy nights in Blackwater, when the bamboo shivers despite the dead wind, if someone walking past hears a familiar voice calling out to them using the exact name of a dead loved one, it is best they never turn around. Because there are calls that don't need a person to answer. The moment they stop walking, it already knows exactly where the weakest spot in their heart lies.